bring the politics, and they want to bring the noise, and they want to bring things that rise to the level of being abusive in the legal process, then they can bear those risks. But the school board member doesn't have that risk. And I think it's a very important policy consideration that our legislators will have to make that decision. The school board association will have its own procedures for evaluating whether it's to adopt this. But all we're asking them is to look at this and consider it.
In other words, this is more of the like Ms. Brown, that group, you're saying they move forward with what they're trying to do as private citizens. And we're simply saying that we support the whole state being able to look at a policy like for all schools.
I think it's a policy that ought to be, it's broader than District 5. I think it's a policy, and I think it's the legislature can look into this, and the school board association look into whether they want to lobby for this. But I think it is worthy of merit, consideration, and if a statute were passed that said if you sit on a board, you can't walk around the table and participate in a legal proceeding against that board's action. I think that's a meritorious policy. If it would have prevented this situation, we can't stop this situation, but what the temporary restraining order said is that's law that the court recognizes, and they're having to finish that. But there could be circumstances beyond the boundaries of that court decision that this policy would still make sense. Now, we're asking Nathan Valentine, Chip Huggins, John Corns, we want to ask a whole bunch of them to take this back and consider it. Consider this, I mean, $7 million is, I hear all this stuff about taxpayer money. $7 million is a lot of money. And we may not be here if we had this sort of policy. But we don't want to be here again. That's for sure. Sure.
I appreciate this motion, Mr. White. One of the questions that I have received over and over and over again in the community or from community members during this whole legal action is they question how a sitting board member can have a legal appeal against their own board that they serve on. And when I explained that there is really no law against that, they find it unbelievable. And it really is, I felt a lot of frustration from people when they ask the question. I don't see how that can possibly be. So I think that what Mr. White is proposing is really probably help clarifying what the community has been asking all along. And I agree with him as well. It is a statewide issue that I've heard of other boards who might be facing similar situations, and we know that there are groups out there who are not supportive of public education, and there's a lot of money, big money, where they are doing whatever they can to help dismantle public education. And I would think that, if they can get behind a school board member, then they would be very much like what Mr. White described as being able to push their agenda through a school board member without any risk of legal problems. So I think that this is a big item for District 5 and also for our state. And I appreciate Mr. White seeing the bigger picture and bringing it to us.
Okay.
Just sometimes I can understand things better than something I see all the time. And let me use it for example. It's a huge issue in our nation, but you may say this is kind of what you're alluding to, Mr. White. We just had a major legislation about health care. The party that opposed it has not brought suit against the majority that supported it. But you do have different suits going to the Supreme Court by other citizens. So you're saying basically the same thing, that a legislative body, the minority, should not sue the majority, somebody outside. And
Correct. And there's been a lot of rhetoric introduced in this whole thing, and whether this is a lawsuit or an appeal. And that's why I was very careful to use the word legal proceeding before governmental agency or court. I mean, it's just anything where you can stop. I mean, The action that's being stopped is the referendum where we took it to the public and the public said, we want you to build, and they voted to approve that. That decision was stopped through permits and appeals. And I refer to them as lawsuits, some people call them appeals. Whatever side of the coin you're on as far as the rhetoric, it is a legal procedure. And so, if a private citizen wants to do that, but you and I have our day here at this board, and one of the complexities I think is, and the reason why I think this policy is so important is private citizens can mount an attack and they can bring facts and they can bring the law and they can bring all the money and they can do whatever they want to do. But when you sit on this board, you have an aura of, I know something that you don't know, or I have an access to information that you don't have, and I see something here that's not right. And none of that even has to be true. And you can use your position to represent things to the public, and then when you bring the politics into it, the public starts misrepresenting it, then the court's never going to be able to rule, in my opinion, unless it's just something black and white. But when you're sitting here saying, there's something wrong with the numbers, there's something wrong with what you're doing, there's something wrong with, I don't think the court's going to be able to separate it. There's no way to say, okay, the board member, you're out of line. But if a private citizen came in with that attack or just clearly information that was being manufactured, I mean, there's mechanisms in the legal process that address that. And that's where everything gets on a fair and even play.
Mr. Turner? Mr. Chairman, since I've been on this board, I think even beginning with the first meeting that I attended as a board member, we talked about the chicken issue, and I think there have been several votes that this board has voted perhaps 6-1 condemning the actions that were taken, and I think the board still feels that same way. And it's the first time I've seen this, and I've mentioned before as a board member that it would be nice to have these things in advance, not really, right, but it'd be nice to have these things in advance to study. I don't know the legal ramifications of this or at all. I don't have any problem at all with what Mr. White is suggesting here to ask our legislature or other groups to look at this issue to see what can be done on this board, future boards, other boards, school board across the state. In reading this the first time, I suppose the issue that I have, and I thought about this, about some of the actions we've taken, perhaps there may be some point in my career on this board that I may be on the other side of the contentious issue. And I'd like to have the opportunity to speak my piece when that comes up. And going back to what Dr. Hefner was talking about earlier tonight, the attempts to mitigate some of the issues going on in this district. And I'll be honest and say, what I have a problem with the way I've read this here is it appears to be personal. Now, I certainly don't have any problem with us sending this issue to our legislature, asking them to rule on it, to give advice to this board. I don't have any problem whatsoever in asking our school board association to look at it as well. I'm not sure what it means to say provide assistance to another group. So there's some questions that I have. The spirit of this I do support, but again, with Dr. Hefner, it certainly is personal, and I understand that that's legal, that's addressing the issue with the appeal or lawsuit, whatever we call it, that is ongoing, it does involve a city board member. If there's a way to deal with this, takes that, what we're hoping to do is accomplish something so this board can move forward. If we can do that without being a personal issue, and do it as a business issue,
Ms. Murphy?
Thank you very much. I have a couple points that I'd like to make. First, for clarification, I was not a school board member when the appeals were filed. I began the process as a citizen. And I believe that my rights as a citizen should not be taken away when I became an elected official. Next, if you will note, the judge is not prohibiting me from my appeals that I have filed. And I too appreciate the financial contributions that have allowed me to continue this process. And Dr. Hefner, I appreciate your vision and your comments to attempt to resolve issues in the adult movement.
Mr. White, we'll come back to you. We've got a motion in a second. Help me a little bit with the mechanics. You're saying we need to do this, if it passes sooner than later. We're talking about the resolution. There's a resolution, much like the tuition tax credit resolution that you signed.
I would imagine, I mean, it authorizes you to draft letters similar to we did with the voucher, the letter that we wrote. And that was, again, a policy statement broader than our actions on this board. And I think, I don't think this thing needs to wait for the next board meeting. I think you could draft a letter to circulate, people can give you comments on email, but you have the authority to bring the letter to closure. This just isn't something we need to go around in circles about. And I think it, we ought to try to get the letter out if it passes. My advice would be this week, because I think time is a factor in that particular proceeding. And can I get another comment?
And I want to follow up, I will, but thank you for that. I do see a few things that the chairman would do. I don't see a problem with that, and Mr. Price to help me with that too. And I think the mechanics that I'm thinking about is possibly draft this resolution, I can send it out, and then if we all do it, we will, if it passes, if this motion passes, come back to it. The second thing, Mr. Turner, you mentioned this a minute ago, you've asked me about this before, about not letting I really strong this. I think the attempt here is to look broader, and I appreciate this from the broad perspective of the state, that someone can be on the board anywhere and be somewhat immune or somewhat protected. The citizenry out there that gets behind it, they go through that person's status, and I think that's kind of what we're doing. But I will say to you, it does get personal when you got a school district of 16,200 and especially personal to these folks in Chapin who have lived in this situation for several years. We ought to be almost completely part of this year round. So I know that's not exactly what this is about, but it is an attempt because we live in this nightmare, in this district. This is an attempt by Mr. White to help us avoid this in the future with other schools. So from that standpoint, I really do appreciate it. I think that's where it does.
Two things real quick. I did see.
I thought it was
Well, I thought you called me.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Did you?
And I do understand that, again, personal issue. I think there's a person living in District 5 that hasn't been made aware of this issue. And as a board, we've tried the best we could the past 8-9 months to encourage this issue be resolved so that particularly community, students, faculty, administration, families, and all that move forward with what I believe are much needed innovations. Once again, I appreciate the spirit of this. I don't know, it's one of those things that I prefer just to have a chance more time to review something before we're asked to vote on something. Because this is a serious matter. Just how serious the implications are of this like resolution and motion, that I don't know. But I do want this resolved. There's quite a bit of motivation here, a lot of taking supporters out there. And trust me, this board wants to move forward with this. And I appreciate what Mr. White is trying to do. I just think that going back to Dr. Hepburne's comment, trying to put an issue to rest, at some point in time, we take some of the individuals out of these issues and deal with the facts. As Dr. Hepburne talked about earlier, perhaps we can move forward and have a better process in resolving some